What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Data Driven Strength Podcast. Zach, you just told me what episode our last one was, but I literally forgot. Was our last one 58?
I think so. 58. Yeah.
Okay, so we're at episode 59. That means episode 60 will be coming around December of 2024. Episode 61 will be June of 2025. So I don't want to say we're back, but we're at least back in this moment right now, recording something. It'll get out there at some point, and I think Zach and I both agree that we've missed this. So we're looking forward to getting back on the horse here with the podcast. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I think we can go ahead and start this one off by giving folks a bit of an update of where we've been. I don't know why you would care, but maybe we'll just go ahead and do it anyway. Um, Most importantly, I am now objectively inferior and less educated than my co-host here, my counterpart, Dr. Zach Robinson. So I think the kids say W's in the chat for that, or just go ahead and shoot him a DM, or if you know him personally, shoot him a message, congratulating him on successfully defending his PhD dissertation. We might get into a little bit of what his PhD was on later in this episode. And those publications will kind of start rolling out. One of them already did, which again, we might discuss that one here a little bit. And then I know it wasn't kind of directly related to your PhD dissertation topic necessarily, but you just got a second paper accepted, which is the reps in reserve meta regression that kind of was heavily discussed and benefited from being pre-printed. So congrats on the two recent papers. Congrats on being a doctor. And how do you feel? Are you a new man?
Honestly, not too much different. No, it was an awesome journey. Like obviously, it's cool to kind of reflect on the whole journey, and um, it's since everything's been kind of said and done, it's been it's been cool to look back and kind of just think about all the things and all the people I've met kind of along the way, and just mentors that I've been fortunate enough to have in my life. So it's been cool. I'll quit the sappy stuff now, but yeah, it's been awesome, and excited to kind of get back to the balance of things in terms of what we like to do, right? Like it's been very much in the school direction for the last couple of months, as I was kind of making that final push towards getting everything done, and all the logistics and things that need to come along with that. But we've been talking the last couple of weeks, and just have been really looking forward to getting back to the balance of things in terms of science communication, and also still being active in research. But and not too much other than that. It feels pretty similar, but a lot more time now to do the stuff that we enjoy.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm excited too because, um, you came to Florida. For folks that don't know, Zach did his master's and now PhD at Florida Atlantic University, but you're not from Florida. So you came down to Florida in what year?
So I actually came down to Florida when I was doing my undergrad internship, and my undergrad internship would have been in late 2019, I think, or early 2019, actually.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So you've been down here a while, and I think we've both kind of reflected on it a bit just in discussing of like how different our perspective is on training and also just research in general.
Yeah.
And probably your interests have shifted since you kind of got into it, in terms of like what gets you fired up going forward, in terms of kind of this intersection of training and research. And I think I speak for both of us in that our minds have changed a lot throughout grad school. So I think it's just cool, man. And I'm really excited for you to start discussing and getting some feedback, and, um, you know, kind of making your mark, I guess, as cringe as it sounds, making your mark a little
Yeah,
bit on the
sure.
field in terms of what your dissertation topic is, because I think it's a really important one, and I think it's really going to make folks kind of reconceptualize training. So I'm excited. Congrats on that. I guess just a couple other high level um, notes about where we've been. We recently went to Boston for the American College of Sports Medicine conference,
Woo
presented
woo.
some work primarily on muscle lengths, both strength and hypertrophy outcomes. So if you happened to attend this very niche conference and you also went to the sessions that weren't even related to strength or hypertrophy, you might have gotten a little bit of a sneak peek into some upcoming papers from our lab, aka maybe one or two people. But had some good conversations with some other people in the field, and always good to kind of go in and connect with folks in that way. And then, also doing our things in terms of the coaching and programming that we offer folks. Um, you know, Coaching has been going great, man. It's also cool to reflect on just how far kind of that has come. I guess speaking for myself here, but I think I speak for both of us. Kind of I guess the degree of confidence in, yeah, just handling folks training now that we've been, I don't want to say going on, no, definitely not a decade, but like, it's been in that like 5 to 8 year range of doing this in some capacity, and just cool to see how far it's come. So continuing to chip away there. Um, uh, Infinity program still going strong, about a year after it's been released. So hey, go check those out if you're interested. But that's kind of what we've been up to, Zach. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, not really. I think, like you said, it's been awesome to kind of, me kind of finishing up school. I have had an opportunity to, like I said, reflect not only on that journey, but also just again, every time we kind of hit a milestone, just kind of looking back at just everything with DDS and kind of thinking about that. And not too long ago, I was, helping my buddy who would come to the gym and squat in jeans to 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 try
Gotta
to hit
love the
that
jeans,
first
man.
hit that first 3 wheel squat. So yeah, man, it's cool. It's cool to look back, and obviously we're got some new energy as we've kind of hit this next part of our journey, part of our outlook with DDS as we kind of get this podcast back rolling. Hopefully, I'm not going to eat my words, and the next one's in 2 years again. But yeah, man, I'm just excited. Coaching's going well. Infinity's going well. Got a lot of cool stuff with research that we hopefully will come out in the next couple of months. And yeah, it's just excited to keep making headway and get into some new projects here.
Jeans were to jeans weren't as stretchy back then, were they?
No, no, yeah, they were definitely not stretchy jeans. This is a shout out Jack Moore, if you're listening. Yeah, dude was awesome. He was one of my buddies that was majoring in computer science, and every now and again he'd come straight from class and just happened to be wearing some nice Levi's that may or may not have any stretch to him, but got it done.
Dude, when you see the guy in the gym with jeans and he's jacked, it's game over, man. Like
Oh, dude, it's over, man.
if he wants to work in, like you
Yes,
just move
sir.
on from that exercise. It's game
Yeah,
over. It's
yeah,
game over.
true.
Also, shopping for jeans is the worst thing in the world. I finally found a pair of jeans. I haven't had jeans that fit me in probably multiple years. Um, but I finally found some recently, and I'm so fired up, and
What a
I'm
what a way
excited.
to announce the first sponsor of the podcast. Go ahead, roll right into the ad.
Dude, it was actually from Target. Target has some snazzy stuff. Like, dude, I've tried all the, like, I don't know, Levi's, Wrangler, all these typical jean companies, man. I can't find anything that fits me, because like I have long legs, but like a regular, like all the different fits, man. It's the worst thing in the world to shop for jeans, and I can never find any that like fit my quads the way I want to, that like are long enough, because I'll find ones that like, yeah, these fit really well, but they go down to like my ankle, or like they go down to my shins, because I'm 6'4", so I need to go like in the big and tall section, but like I'm not like, I don't have a huge waist, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, hopefully Jack is still wearing his jeans. Okay, moving into, I guess, just plans for this podcast, because I don't know why you'd care about that, but maybe we'll just give you some insight into why we want to get this back rolling again. Um, I'll start by saying make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter and following us on Instagram, because I think each of those kind of platforms have their own individual roles, if you will. And I think specifically for the podcast, it's a nice opportunity for us to kind of get into the weeds, and in a way, like work through some of these ideas. I think Zach and I, upon reflection, like it helps us be better scientists, better understand these ideas because it kind of forces us to hash these things out. So we'll try to bring you fully baked ideas the best we can, because those are probably a little bit more helpful. But we've actually gotten some feedback that kind of discussing that uncertainty um, between the two of us and kind of working through it and us learning kind of along the way, other folks benefit as well. So that's kind of the role of the podcast. Will come with some new ideas. Probably some of it will be us hashing it out between the two of us, working through these things, and hopefully it enriches your training and or coaching / training practice, or if you happen to be a researcher, give you an idea or two in that realm as well.
Yep, I agree.
Cool, man. All right. Main topic for today. I think this is a good way to start as we roll into the podcast. Um, this is something that I know I've wrestled with in my mind a lot over the last not only 6 months since this podcast has been active, but I'd say just like probably since starting grad school, to be honest, and getting involved in research. And that is this kind of role of optimization and the benefits of understanding complexities. I think there's kind of two archetypes of folks. On one hand, you have the people that really appreciate kind of this optimization approach and appreciate the complexities because they think these things are going to add up to more productive training for themselves or their clients. And then on the other hand, I think there's been maybe a little bit of a trend away from optimization in some other folks, maybe claiming that that leads to overthinking, or it is unnecessary to think about some of these details. And I reserve the right to change my mind, but I feel like I've worked through some of these things in my head a decent bit, and I've come to a bit of a mental model that I think would be helpful to discuss on the podcast here. And kind of my mental model is that understanding these complexities and kind of taking this more optimization and if you will, a nuanced approach to training, it not only allows us to optimize like the quote unquote ideal lifestyle, or someone that has very little confounders to their ability to train in terms of time and energy or injury, but also it allows folks that are constrained in terms of time, energy, injury, etc., to optimize within constraints. Maybe we need a different word for optimization to kind of contextualize it within those constraints. But I think that is where I've kind of landed over time, is that these things are important to understand because it allows us to be as efficient as possible within the constraints that we do have. So Zach, what do you think of that?
No, 100%. I think there's a few things that are important to kind of uh, make sure we're on the same page about on the front end that kind of influence the way that this conversation evolves. So I think the first thing is the unfortunate reality that gains, strength, size, what have you, taper off substantially over time. That's kind of just self-evident in the sense that the return on investment that we get from training over time is going to kind of taper off. The reason that's relevant is because when it comes to this conversation, you can have people that are very split on this topic in the sense that, let's take training volume just as an example. If I maximize the amount of training volume that I'm using in a given week, mesocycle, etc., that is going to allow me to reach new heights, or heights I would never be able to reach otherwise. That's one position. The other position is that optimization is simply getting you to the end of the race more efficiently, but it doesn't actually get you to a different spot. And I think if you take that position, I think that's where a lot of the people that critique optimization, I understand their perspective, because ultimately, if it's not getting me to a greater destination, why would I go through what they perceive as all this additional effort that's, for the most part, not going to matter if you take the entire length of a training career? I get that perspective. However, the thing about that I think is often kind of a hidden premise is that our constraints are not infinite. That's the part of it that is kind of a hidden premise in that kind of situation, because that's saying that if I have unlimited time to train, unlimited access to resources, all of these kind of situations, then that kind of pattern could play out. But if I do have these logistical constraints that pretty much everyone does, understanding optimal training principles may actually get you to a different height in that case, because by being more efficient, that actually may lead to an additive effect. So I don't have like a super strong opinion on that, because the extent to which these constraints limit our ability to reach our maximum potential is somewhat unknown. But at least conceptually, I think that's a really important thing to kind of keep in mind, to say that, yeah, it could just be that it's making training more efficient, but it also could be in the face of like pretty meaningful constraints, then it's also getting us to kind of a greater end, or a greater additive sum at the end of the road. So I understand where a lot of the hesitancy in terms of the quote unquote optimization craze comes from, but I think you can do it, in a practical way that doesn't really deter from what I'll just call like the training experience. That is like part of it that we really enjoy, and some people feel like, adding all these crazy exercises and stuff kind of takes away from that. But I know you have some terms that you have been working on that kind of maybe summarize this in a different way that might connect with people a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's very well put when you kind of zoom out in terms of what is the destination. Ultimately, kind of what you're getting at is like the natty limit, or maybe even the enhanced limit to some degree. Like if you view that as a hard ending point, or even something that reaches such a strong degree of diminishing returns that it's effectively a hard ending point. Um, if that is true, then yeah, you might just get to that point a little bit quicker with a more quote unquote optimized approach. But whether that is the case, it kind of remains to be seen. I would lean on the side of it is probably going to be more limited by constraints than it's not, right? So, like, in other words, I think a lot of folks might just be constrained by time itself, total time they have in their life to train hard, train consistently, check their boxes. But then if you kind of take someone that's a little bit more on the, hey, I just do this because I want to be jacked, and it's a cool lifestyle. Um, and let's say they have 5 years in their 20s before they start a family or whatever, and their career really gets going or whatever. And then they want to maintain those 5 years are going to be more productive, and thus kind of what they're able to maintain long term is going to be at a greater level. So that's kind of how I think of it. And I think we can view the role of optimization in these complexities as informing two two aspects of our understanding of training. The first is efficiency, like we talked about. So, like, okay, I have a given amount of time or a given amount of energy to allocate to training. How can I make that as efficient as possible? How can I make a given dosage as effective as possible? I would define that as efficiency. And then we can also think of uh, research as informing how additional dosage informs additional responses, right? So, better understanding the nature of the dose response relationship between additional work, additional time investment, additional energy investment, and the outcome of interest. So, obviously, we could, have dozens of podcast episodes just talking about various aspects of efficiency and various aspects of dosage based on goals and other circumstances. But that's kind of a mental model that I think is helpful is, hey, I'm either trying to get to the highest destination possible, or I'm trying to get to a certain destination as efficiently as possible. So I want to understand the nature of the efficiency of the training I'm doing. And I also want to understand the nature of the dose response of the training I'm doing, and kind of create a plan accordingly, or take an approach accordingly. And then in terms of like that, what we've been discussing is a little bit more on the optimization side of things. If we kind of turn a little bit more towards like why discuss these complexities? Why discuss, I think like something that comes to mind is the mechanisms that underlie the potential benefits of longer muscle length training. Why discuss these things? Like it doesn't matter. We just see that, oh, if you train at longer muscle lengths and kind of make that a bias in your training, you'll probably see better gains. Why can't we just stop there? There's countless other examples, right? But I think it's important to take a step back and realize that simplicity in terms of practical takeaways requires a lot of complexity on the front end. So I came up with this phrase myself. I don't know if it's new, it's probably not. But that is that simplicity is one step after complexity. So, in a lot of ways, simplicity is harder than complexity. So, kind of going back to the role of this podcast, if we work through the complexities, we can hopefully, like at the other end of that, have some simple take homes and some simple heuristics. But if you have those simple heuristics and your understanding is surface level, that's a lot less valuable than simple heuristics with kind of an underlying understanding of the complexities, right? So that's why I think, in a lot of ways, definitely follow our Instagram account, our YouTube channel, and our newsletter. But in a lot of ways, from a purely education perspective, I think a medium like this, longer form, is going to be a lot better, for those reasons.
Not to cut
And
you off, but just
yeah,
an
go for it.
immediate thing that came to mind with that. Um, uh, like the one thing I always think about is you kind of have to like earn simplicity. Is like one way that I like to think about it. But from a practical perspective, an analogy I think everyone can relate to, whether this is in high school, college, what have you. Think about how much easier it is to word vomit on an assignment when you have to write a paper for something. So I can crank out 5 to 10 pages of absolute nonsense on something in terms of what I think, just like expanding the word count unnecessarily, and that's like what people often do with essays that they have to meet a certain page requirement, right? Like that's kind of easy to do, but what's really really hard is to meet a short requirement and make sure all the necessary information is in there, and you have to have a good enough understanding of the topic to know what is sufficient to get the idea across and what is okay to omit. So I think that is like a very simple way people can kind of like grasp with that, because when you have to write a 2 page summary of something that's extremely long, or maybe a complicated topic, to do that well is much harder than to say an unlimited number of pages explain to me this thing, right? So that's what immediately came to mind with this topic, and why I completely agree that like simple is always more challenging, because it necessitates you to prioritize things and understand what is sufficient to get the idea across, and what is able to be omitted and not lose the practicality of the suggestion.
Yeah, very, very well said. And I also think it's helpful to reflect on the the kind of life of, or the creation of a new concept. Because once we have concepts that become generally accepted, and then they are generally accepted, right? It seems obvious after the fact, right? There are a lot of things that I think folks take for granted that were not taken for granted, and maybe were hotly debated 10 years ago, 20 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, right? So if we could be a small push in that direction of eventually making some things obvious, I would view this as a win, right? I think a really helpful example of this is the heliocentric model of the solar system, right? Just the fact that the sun is the center of the solar system. That seems very obvious to us now. Oh, there's mountains of evidence. No other model would make sense. No other model would fit our understanding of the universe, right? It took many decades for that to become generally accepted. That's obviously a bit of an extreme example, but I think that's helpful to think through as, hopefully being again like a small part of the evolution of our understanding of, I guess, just the nature of the world. In this case, the nature of human physiology. In terms of our field, maybe we could quickly go through some things that it's almost like we take for granted now that didn't seem obvious at first. I'll use a personal example. Go for it, Zach.
Oh, I was literally just gonna say the most obvious example to me, but you go take yours first, and I'll take it after.
Yeah, one for me is that I remember when I first started training and I learned about like training variables, I thought that if you decreased your volume, like you would be unable to make gains. So I remember I was doing like pretty high volume training as you do when you get after it in, you're in high school and you don't really have much else to do besides go to basketball practice and then go lift for 3 hours after that basketball practice. And then I like learned how to count set volume and I was like, oh wow, that's high. And I was like, at that time people were maybe like, oh, 10 to 20 sets. I was like, oh, okay, I got to do 10 to 20 sets, but I'm doing 35 right now. I'm going to lose all my gains because I know volume is important, right? So like those things were like would keep me up at night, and I would like try to listen to whatever people I could on the internet at the time and find the answer to this question. And it was just it was really troublesome to me, to be honest. But now I just know that that kind of to some degree I don't want to say is ludicrous because I think the whole concept of relative changes in volume is a very interesting one. But just the idea that you can no longer make any gains if you reduce your volume is something that I would no longer even worry about and seems relatively simple and straightforward to me. So that's an example that comes to mind for me, but maybe you have a more general one.
Oh, I was just the immediate one that came to mind was the fact that low loads can build muscle. I think that is like that concept to me was just absolutely no shot. Like if I can, lift 100 pounds and I'm going to lift 30 pounds and you're telling me I'm going to build muscle with that, absolutely no way. And then obviously now when we understand proximity to failure and you can throw some mechanistic kind of sauce on there with motor unit physiology, etc. Oh, obviously that makes sense. If I'm taking it to failure, why would it be any different? But that definitely was not the intuitive explanation when I was coming up and kind of understanding this stuff. So I think that is another really common example of like the way that people kind of think about it. Another one would be like uh, how can you get the same fat loss with a low carbohydrate, high carbohydrate diet? You sprinkle a little bit of insulin kind of mechanisms in there. Oh, if I eat carbohydrate, insulin gets turned on. I can't, have lipolysis anymore, etc. Like those little things, like we can very simply discuss why those are no longer adequate explanations of what's going on. But to get through all of that, initially took a lot of work, and there's a lot of complexity that goes there to have additional nuance that goes when communicating those things. But at this day and age, like with each one of those things, we can have a pretty swift and easy you know practical takeaway to tell somebody why that's probably not the best way to think about it. Starting with yours,
Yeah.
we could say, think about any medication, right? Somebody gets put on a medication and the dose maybe is a little bit too high for them. If you decrease the dose to not have any side effects, etc., it's not like it's removing the entire active component of that drug. It's probably still going to listen in effect. It just might be a less of an effect or a better balance of the side effect to effect ratio, what have you. So that's easy. Low and high loads, like I just said, take everything to failure. The underlying physiology is going to be relatively similar. You're just getting there in different ways. And then the carbohydrate thing, obviously, the whole calorie situation is going to be something that's an easy way to explain that to somebody who's a little bit less familiar. So I think, yeah, each I just explained that in 30 to 60 seconds, but to get there is a lot of discussion, complexity, et cetera, that you're ultimately just simplifying to the extent that it becomes a practical suggestion.
I even noticed that with some of the work that we've done. Like the first main project of my PhD, I've known the results of it's not publicly available yet, but I've known the results of for or at least like the keystone results for a few months now. And like I've started to internalize it and conceptualize it within like my mental model of training and physiology. And it seems like obvious to me now, but I remember the first time, you know, we ran the analysis and we saw the outcome, like it was surprising. But now it seems simple, obvious, intuitive. But that wasn't the case just a few months ago, right? So I think this reminding yourself of this is helpful. And if you listen to this podcast, I guess this is all a pitch for you to subscribe and make sure you're keeping up with the podcast. If you listen to this, right, like you're gonna better understand these things that in 5 years, hopefully, there are some new concepts that seem obvious, seem simple, seem intuitive. You're gonna understand kind of how we got there and have a better baseline understanding of it. Zach, I think we should save the discussion of your recent paper. I will mention the title of it. If you look up Zach Robinson ResearchGate on Google, you'll be able to find it. And is the full text on ResearchGate?
Yep.
Cool. It's titled N of 1, Optimizing Methodology for the Detection of Individual Response Variation in Resistance Training. I just read it again right before this because I thought we were going to talk about it, but I think we'll save it. Just awesome paper, and I can say that because I wasn't on it, and I can gas Zach up a little bit. Really awesome paper with a lot of esteemed co-authors. We'll discuss that in a bit, but if you're a super nerd and you want to skim it before a future episode, definitely go ahead and do so. But I'll finish the podcast with a quote from a dude named Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. I don't know much about him. I can't remember where I heard the quote, but I saved it. Right before this, I looked up his Wikipedia page. He was like a physician poet. He was also associated with what's called the Fireside Poets. I don't know what the hell that is. Seems sweet. I think he went to Harvard. We just visited Harvard. Super cool.
He's
He was
probably
born in
like into
Cambridge.
eugenics or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get probably missing something important. But he was born in Cambridge. We just visited Cambridge a few weeks ago. It was beautiful. It was awesome. So he's basically like family at this point. But the quote is, for the simplicity on this side of complexity, I wouldn't give you a fig. But for the simplicity on the other side of complexity, for that I would give you anything I have. Which the first time I read that, I was like, what the hell is he saying? But it really resonates with me, and I just keep returning to it. So if you have simplicity on this side of complexity, that kind of indicates a simplistic understanding of a subject, right? So you have these surface level understandings of these things that are obvious. And if you don't grasp the underlying complexity, it's not valuable, right? I wouldn't give you a fig for that. But if you have simplicity on the other side of complexity, right? If you have simplicity that comes one step after complexity, that indicates you have a thorough understanding and you've worked through those complexities, and you have a simplicity that is refined in nature. And for that, I would give you anything I have. So thought that was a cool
I think
quote.
that's like I don't know when this came out or what year you said that's from. That's like literally Dunning-Kruger, like perfectly explained, probably before. I think there's like some research on like why Dunning-Kruger itself like may not be totally founded, but from like a observational perspective, like I think that's perfect to explain kind of how people come to ascertain information and their ability to articulate it. And that is literally what that quote said to me, at least.
Beautiful. Anything to add here, Zach, before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, I think just excited to get back to recording the podcast a little more regularly. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube, all the other outlets that Josh mentioned at the top of the show. Feel free to reach out to us either on Instagram. We're going to more regularly post Q&As. So if you want to hear us discuss different things on the show, that's something we want to integrate more regularly and kind of how we're going to approach this. So feel free to reach out to us, but we'll be regularly posting kind of those Q&A boxes if you're interested to make sure that we can cover some of the things you guys are interested in. And yeah, just let us know if there's anything else we can do to make the show better or something that's something we're not currently doing. We're trying to upgrade everything in all levels possible. So hopefully that is evident, and we'll catch you on the next episode. So Josh, if you got anything else, I'll close this out.
We'll see you in a week, maybe.
See ya.